Good to see you guys all, and we'll be having also MCG a little bit discussing with me about this building on Cornerstone, and quite excited about all these stuff. So, but I before I invite MCG, I will be just like sharing a few little things before, and then we'll jump right into that stuff. So I will be sharing my screen here. Seems like it's coming out okay. But yeah, so today we'll be discussing about building in Cornerstone, and what does that actually mean, and what are these all the plans, and what is the whole fuss about that thing. So something that um, like there are actually like an important factors there, as the whole Cornerstone has been planned on that statement that we're creating this photorealistic metaverse, that we already have the island existing. We have some landowners who have been building, but only having few people building on it, it's not going to be enough, because we need to have lots and lots of different things that people are capable of creating this type of engaging content, and through that that is very attractive for the other players. Because otherwise, if you would be coming to the island just one time, and there wouldn't be something so interesting, so very easily it would come this thing where you actually come in one time, but next time there wouldn't be such a big interest to come again. So that's why we actually are very like wanting to create this type of infrastructure, wanting to create this type of um, education with the different tools, and encouraging everyone to build, because the whole economy is based on that later on, as there would be lots of buildings that would be there for different purposes, and then when the people come, so that they would be wanting to use their fragments and purchasing different services or assets, and all that. So as you know already, that the companions and land and crystals, that's the way to get you fragments. But in the future, when there is not that much land anymore available, not companion prices has been raising higher. So then at that time, people would be then wanting to, through the global token, they would be wanting to transfer those to the fragments, so that they would be able to use that in-game currency of Cornerstone, that they would be able to purchase different services, and uh, enter to, for example, different things. What could be like, here's just some examples about that, like entertainment venues, for example, someone hosting a virtual event or show or concert. It could be educational center for some type of immersive e-learning experience. It could be even some artistic studios where people are creating some cool new stuff, and cultural centers, which might be a heritage about our physical world. It might be about the metaverse world. It can be community spaces where there is collaboration and engagement, and even the residential dwellings, meaning that someone would want to set up their personal space. It's a little bit something similar as we have our digital space, and as we have, for example, your laptop or your different services that you have, that what we believe that in the future people will be having and wanting to organize their personal, even memories, or their social life, or whatever different things, their assets, what they own, that those are in that virtual home. And it's also a social hub where you would be able to control who can access to your virtual home and all that. Then of course the business through the commercial hubs, meaning that it could be a storefront, it could be a headquarters of of something, of an office or a business or some type of other place. So here are just some uh, examples of that, what it can be. But then I would want to introduce MCG here. Okay, perfect.
There we go. Can you hear me?
Yes, very well. Welcome.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I appreciate it, and good morning. I appreciate the introduction, and it's a great start to this call. So I'll give you a quick background. McG comes from the first three letters of my last name, McGrain. I am an architect and artist out of Southern California, and also a co-founder and chief design officer of a group called Allura. We teamed up together, I think almost 2 years ago at this point, because we saw where the space was going and really wanted to create opportunities to allow companies to engage in this space. So what we do is we design, we consult, and we help people procure property and help them develop their brand and their buildings in the metaverse. So this first screen, maybe I'll just kind of walk around kind of what these are. So like I said, first and foremost, I am an architect. I started using Midjourney, I think, as soon as, I think it might have been like version V1 or 2 or 3, something real early where it was all cartoony, couldn't really get much out of it. And now we're in version 6, and what you're getting out of just a few keywords really democratizes and allows almost anybody to come up with ideas and really interesting architectural concepts. And I think that's probably one of the things that we can really talk about here is it's getting to a point where anybody, like you were saying earlier, can come into the space and participate. You don't have to go through this really lengthy design exercise. And of course, I hope that my services are always something that are useful to brands to help them realize their visions. But just what you kind of see on this screen here are some initial ideations through Midjourney. I'll talk a little bit about the design process and how to go from Midjourney to 3D modeling, and then finally potentially into Cornerstone. So that's kind of a start there.
Cool.
Awesome. Thank you. I didn't want to speak over the sound on that because then it would have just turned into a cluster. But I'm wondering if maybe we could do a pause over maybe one of the exterior views of the building, and then I can just kind of talk around the design, and I'll touch on the process and that sort of thing. Yeah, let's. Yeah, something like around here is fine. Oh, perfect. Okay. So our property is located, looks like the screen went dark.
Yeah.
There we go. Our property is located kind of right in the center of the island, outside of the capital event venue, called in the area called the Circle. And what we did is the three partners, we teamed up and we merged three lots. And maybe I'll touch on kind of what it takes to build in this project. So what we did was we started with some initial concepts and ideas, and we're trying to understand and figure out, okay, what does it mean to have a space for collaboration and communication, creation, and all of these amazing things that we think that the metaverse will be, and how do we create a venue to attract companies or any other sort of events or things like that to a space to maybe it's housing some sort of exhibition or a training seminar or yeah, anything kind of along the lines of where people would typically travel to get together to go to a convention or something. We need to create a space that's truly architecturally impressive, but also has the capability of housing a number of spaces for both large venue connections and also breakout areas for smaller, more intimate gatherings or breakout sessions. So, the concept, for us for designing, it's always especially starting about, what is the concept? What is the meaning behind a building? It's not just pretty forms and shapes that create spaces, at least not in my mind. And we came up with this metaphor of the tree of life. And the idea is that you have this architecturally designed kind of feature tree sculpture in the middle of the building, which is rooted just like any natural tree into the ground. Those roots are kind of a metaphor for we used a lot of kind of highfalutin terms like mycelium and artificial networks and all of these words that try to convey this idea that just like in real life, the roots of trees can communicate to each other, whether it's to share nutrients or information about the weather, or let's just say someone else is damaged, etc. The idea is that the roots of this structure are really kind of the data networks that connect us around the world, and we all come together in a space to do what I mentioned earlier. It's to connect and to collaborate and do all of these things. So what you're looking at is the center, like really strong architectural piece that is kind of the heart of the building. And you have this large kind of venue that's kind of undulating and dome shaped. It's similar to one of the projects I did in real life. And you have these two flanking buildings that kind of pop up out of the ground behind. And these are kind of like pavilions, right? So these are kind of breakout venues. But what's interesting about this is the public space is kind of what you see on top. And as we did the fly through around, it's kind of this nature oriented space where you're kind of having this indoor outdoor connection, and it's very kind of natural and smooth. Now, what's under, which you barely get a glimpse of in here, is kind of the meat and potatoes of this structure, where you're kind of taken into these areas where there's breakout spaces and smaller meeting venues and just a whole bunch more to do. So there's so much more, and I'm going to talk about kind of what the design process is and due diligence feasibility for a second, because like what I mentioned, we took three properties. Each of these properties, when you merge them together in this system, whether it's one property or three, what happens is you're going to have setbacks. So just like in real life, you can't build to your property line. We did our feasibility and due diligence based off of the Cornerstone standards. So you have to set back a certain amount of meters. You have a maximum height that you can build, and then you have a maximum depth that you can build underground as well. So this building, this iteration of our building is merely like phase one. It's the seed of life for us. We have the capability of growing this building quite tall because we have 3 properties. And just like any tree, this building will grow and evolve as our community grows and as our functions grow. You know, you don't need to build a mansion if you only have 2 people. So for us, the idea is that as we understand the needs of our clients, we will grow this building, and maybe it'll grow taller. Maybe there's going to be some floating components above it. We have so many ideas, and we're really excited to kind of see where it goes from here. But step one of this process is really looking at what's your inspiration and what's kind of the background idea behind it. Step two, what are we building, and how big can we build, and so on and so forth. And then step three, maybe we can switch to the other slide, because those are just kind of some thumbnails that we can walk through.
Yeah. Yeah. And like one question
Perfect. Okay.
One question before that, like you mentioned, that was super interesting about the something that is such like a tree growing naturally and over time taking more space and all that. So it would be interesting to just like a little bit more here about that. Like, how do you see in general the metaverse architecture, the possibilities compared to the physical world, where you need to be limited by like the physical structures and all. So how do you see that part?
Yeah. That's one of the most exciting and kind of brain bending things for me, particularly. I've been so rooted in physical architecture for 20 years that, you know, when you start and you go to architecture school, you get to think like the building that we just looked at. You get to think about these wild ideas. You don't need to worry about structural engineering or geotechnical work or retaining walls or budgets, especially budgets. Being in the metaverse, kind of, it's almost like watching The Matrix, where all of a sudden you can do anything again. So for someone that is, again, rooted in kind of the real life, it's taken a little bit of time to kind of refine that spark that it used to have, as far as like being able to kind of think outside of the quote unquote box. And that's kind of the most exciting thing, is we can really do and design anything. In Cornerstone, for example, you know, this building is extremely undulating. The cost of something to build something like this and is likely in the hundreds of millions of dollars for the size. And I think that's what's really important. And when I mentioned kind of the potential for the future, one of the really interesting things that I'm thinking about is creating some elements that are actually floating and levitating, but they can only do that through NOSA. So that's kind of where it connects to kind of the lore and to the actual like physicality of this metaverse and the rules and all of that sort of stuff. So I'm super excited about the ability to again, like, just create and free the mind a little bit.
Yeah, and maybe just before jumping into, I just like you mentioned about the restrictions and all, like even though it's in a little bit later here in the presentation, but I just need to skip and jump for it because you mentioned that. So
Oh,
so
sure.
so about these things that you actually, because uh, like we have been building for Cornerstone, and it's been great to also have your expertise involved in that, but helping us out and giving opinions on that through your architectural background. But like having these restrictions, like how that made the process, and how do you felt like same time you would have that matrix type, you can create anything, but now having those restrictions in the metaverse architecture, like how did it feel, and how did you come around that?
Yeah. You know, I look at rules or regulations or restrictions as opportunities, to kind of help direct a design. You know, for instance, looking at this slide really talks about a multiplicity of things: setbacks, building heights, how high or how low in the site you can build, and these are extremely important and we have to recognize that we have neighbors and we have a sun, and we need to have all have equitable access to sunlight. And you don't want to have a building like squished up against another, because then you just end up in like a New York City experience where you really only see the front side of buildings and you're kind of like bookends. So rules and regulations are supremely important to allow us to create kind of like this all encompassing the design that you can kind of completely go around. So I find it as something that actually helps navigate the design a little bit. It's you can get this thing that I use the term option fatigue with clients sometimes. So if I were to come to a client and say, here's 25 floor plan options for your house, it's impossible to really come to a conclusion on where to go, because there's just too many. It's like picking candy at a candy store situation. So once you start to integrate some of these rules, you can start to listen to the site, and you can listen to those rules, and that will kind of help inform that design a little bit. So I actually look at it as a net positive.
Yeah. And maybe there was a good question from Mokun for about these rules that are there on the master plan of the whole island, and there's these different districts, and there are some of these rules already, but there will be a little bit more. For example, like how like the height of the buildings in certain districts, and those type of things, that, and if you're in a certain row, and the plot size. So there are quite a heavy mirror board about these, and when people actually start building that, we share that stuff as well. and and for that also, like maybe about the master plan, and something, when there was the material selection, and maybe before we actually jump into tools, there is these materials that it's also somehow part of the like our building guidelines. But this is also something that we don't have that system in place yet, but we are about to do that. These resources in the island, that certain materials, how much materials, so the people who have been land builders, and people who started to build already, they haven't needed to actually take that into consideration, that do they have enough resources to actually build this stuff. But it will be presented in the future, that it gives certain value for the stuff, as we're entering to in the metaverse in the future, where design, that with the AI assisted tools, it's possible to create lots of different designs, but certain limitation on the resources will create the value for what type of things you actually get to create. But maybe MCG, about the material, like what materials you wanted to use, and how was that?
Yeah, I'm glad you bring that up. I'll talk about that as well as the map with the different districts, because if we're looking at an experiential process, and the idea of being able to go around the island and navigate into these different districts, it's extremely important to, in real life, what happens when you go to Greece, or if you go to a Chinatown, all the buildings kind of have this language, whether it's rooted into their heritage, or the materials that are available, or the building methods at the location, etc. They all kind of speak the same language, and we want the idea, to allow users of the island to know where they're at based off of those languages in the different districts, and those may inform who's actually, what type of businesses, or like, all the multiple uses you mentioned earlier might be in those districts. But also the materials are extremely important for not only for kind of our building that we presented, but kind of just overall. Our concept in our building was of the island, from the island, right? So, what kind of materials can we utilize that are actually locally mined? And we looked at kind of inspiration of kind of the volcanic stone and the noza, and kind of how do we find those materials into kind of a building palette that actually fits with the land. So we have lots of trees. Okay, there's our wood, and that'll kind of identify kind of our tonal ranges we might want to work with. And like you said, we've been building here, so we haven't necessarily had those same restrictions. But I really, our team thought about that. We wanted this building not look like it just got shipped in from Venice, Italy, or something like that. We wanted it to kind of feel like it was part and parcel of the land. So a lot of the dark stone that you see is really reminiscent of the volcanic stone, etc. So the material palette is extremely important, not only to identify where you're at in the island district, but also to just not to have a whole bunch of neon greens and pink buildings everywhere. Now, when we talked, is there may be some opportunity to have some accents for those. I think we want buildings that actually look like they're from this place. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, like exactly, and I think that's been nicely following the whole idea that how we want to Cornerstone to actually match and feel, and as the community and the first streamers are the community shaping that culture, and then these buildings, and which are the early buildings, and while we are starting to do the soft access and everything, it's actually having a like great impact at which buildings are there and what you can do on those. And and then also like you just mentioned about the NOSA levitation stuff, and that's quite exciting. And just to explain for everyone, if someone has missed that information, so as the NOSA fragments, that's the energy, life, and knowledge in the cornerstone. So you would need to use, for example, you would want to levitate a certain structure, you would need to use that energy part on that of the NOSA fragments. Or if you would own a crystal, you could use that, as the crystals are, they fragments are just like a tiny dust of that crystal. So those crystals would be, for example, for adding one crystal underneath your building, you could actually constantly levitate that. So and bigger building you would want to levitate, and higher you would want to levitate. So there would be all that physics in place later on. But like, has there been some NOSA, like a little bit, if there's some ideas about the NOSA usage in the building?
Yeah, and that's part of our future plans. Of I mentioned elements that are levitating. I really kind of see the future iterations of this building to be something that's like these leaves are kind of floating and levitating. Maybe there's very light branches that connect to these elements. So yes, we've stocked away our crystals and NOSA, and we're prepared to utilize that to help levitate not only this building, but kind of part of that. And talking about maybe talking a little bit also about the companions. We've kind of, there was a glimpse at the very end of the video where you go kind of down and underwater. Like I mentioned, a lot of this building is actually underground. So a big part of this building is looking out into this kind of aquarium space where all the aquatic companions will be kind of naturally living in this environment, and so on. And around, our property is fairly large, so we're going to have kind of this large kind of natural parkscape that kind of meanders and weaves throughout everything. So we kind of see this really kind of deeply rooted connection to the island, to the energy source, to the companions that are living there, as kind of part and parcel to the design. I think that's really important for anybody that's designing to think about. If you've got all of these companions, where you got to house them too, potentially, and give them space and support kind of what they're doing as well. So I think that's kind of an exciting element too.
Yeah, and I love it how you guys are like taking these possibilities and restrictions and guidelines into consideration, because that's exactly like the right way of doing metaverse design and architecture is living and creating and designing it based on those actual things, that how does that gamified virtual world is going to function, because you might be doing something completely different that is not actually taking these things which are the key elements, such as the nodes of power and companions in Cornerstone. So I really love how that has been taking into consideration. And maybe just one like also important thing about the companions in this building process. And there is this some like an idea that we really want to implement. Also same thing, like the early builders get to a little bit more Wild West and freedom than later on, when all these structures and physics are in place. But what we want to do, that companions in a little bit similar form than the animals serve the humankind of building certain cities and building our modern civilization. So same way companions can be part of that, as they can be that workforce and helping. So you would be needing to utilize companions for in the future to build those structures. So that would be one utility for the companions. And then there comes the involvement, that if you would have them in the more mature stages, it would actually allow you to build faster, for example. And then gathering those resources, that will be part of that active staking through the companions. And so all of these elements are actually playing together in that sort. And but then it's nice to have that aquarium, because after the island, once it's completely built, such as the certain modern city, then companions, that part of the utility becomes less relevant. But then that's the where you can have all the cool and rare aquatics swimming around. But yeah, like, should we have few words about the tools
Sure.
and the different things that were used of building this? Maybe if you can mention like what were used, and
Perfect.
how did you feel about using these
Yeah.
different tools?
Sure. So let's kind of start with, again, step one in this design process is really about ideation and coming up with kind of a meaning and the design language, etc. Midjourney's been an exceptionally useful tool, not only for a metaverse project like this, but I utilize it in my physical work as well when I'm coming up with inspiration for a project or furniture or anything really. So Midjourney, definitely a step one. If you don't do it, if you haven't done it, listen to the previous, I guess you'd call it Discord cast that Mika did, talking about kind of how to utilize that, because I think it's going to be just like Chat GPT. It is a very, very useful tool. So what we did is, we started with coming up with, I mentioned earlier, what's the idea? So we put in keywords like tree of life and artificial intelligence and all these terms to kind of inspire kind of an architecture vision. And we came up with this kind of initial concept of this architectural tree form. And that was kind of really all it had. But from there, we need to expand it. So what I did in our case was I went from Midjourney into Dolly, because at the time you can expand your frame in Dolly and it'll kind of help create a larger scheme. And you can also kind of take out people, take out trees, that sort of thing. Photoshop now has those capabilities, which is great. So we start with Midjourney, then you kind of edit that image down and refine it into kind of a general architectural form that you're really looking to. Because the idea is, once you need to get a still image of what this building might look like, at least from one side. Then you drop it into a program called KDM. I've been using KDM since I think since like week 2 of their launch, and they've grown quite advanced over the last, I'd say, almost a year now. And what their AI platform is an image to 3D model asset generator. So they're really geared towards, let's say you're an animator and you wanted to create some sort of game, character or other features in a game. But I saw that, why can't we use that for architecture? Why can't we use that for furniture? Why can't we use it for any other uses? So I'm pretty sure I was probably the first kind of architectural use of this kind of concept. And the idea is you take that still image, you throw it into Kadem. Kadem will then give back a 3D asset. They have a really interesting tool set, and I really encourage anybody to go look at it. You upload that image, they send you this. They'll send you kind of this initial 3D model. They have a great dashboard, and then I'll give them some comments, just kind of like you would do in Midjourney, where you want to refine a design. I'll talk about areas, or I can mark it up on there, and they go back and then they iterate it. Now, I've talked to them personally multiple times. Their process is hybrid AI and human interface, which I actually like, because AI is great to an extent, but sometimes you kind of hit a wall. Just like when you're talking to an AI and Chat GPT, sometimes you kind of get some weird stuff back. So having a little bit of kind of a human oversight allows them on their end to really edit and refine and send you back a 3D modeling asset that's almost usable for a project of any sort in this space. And what I mean by that is, yeah, again, we're talking about the democratization of anybody being able to kind of create these really amazing 3D spaces. This allows anybody to kind of come up with a concept and model something that's highly complex and difficult that would normally take months and months and months to really refine fairly quickly. Now, what I will say is, once you get that 3D asset from Kadem, we'll take it into a series of 3D modeling programs, whether it's Blender, SketchUp, a whole bunch of different things that we're utilizing on our side to refine it, to detail it, to bring it to life. And that's a really important step still in our process, because what you do get back is kind of the shell, the general structure. But the way that I look at creating architecture in a metaverse is it has to be world class no matter what. So no matter whatever I'm working on in this space, it really takes a lot of time and iteration and love to really kind of refine it. But if we're just simply talking about a general pavilion structure, you can pretty closely go from Kadem quickly into Unreal. And it'll look pretty decent, and it allows most anybody to kind of utilize and generate these 3D assets. Now, I know that you guys have been working on some AI 3D modeling tools as well in the dashboard, which I'm excited to kind of see come to life. But our process still to this today is Midjourney to Kadem to some sort of 3D modeling development, depending on what our uses are. It's Blender, Grasshopper, SketchUp, it doesn't matter. And then we'll drop it into Unreal, where we will finalize the materials, the plant materials, kind of the material texturing. There's a lot of things that you have to think about as far as UV mapping and geometries and all of that sort of stuff. And once we get it into Unreal, we've been kind of going in kind of a quality assurance process for two of our projects right now: the Tree of Life, which we've looked at for Laura, as well as Asset Reveal, which is another project that I've kind of talked about previously, and we're really excited to finally get that launched. Both of these are kind of in the very final stages of going back and forth with you guys and having a final design ready for the island.
Yeah, and there was a question about if it's subscription based. So yes, it's a monthly price. They have something. It's like, I would say it's a little bit more expensive than many other tools out there, because Midjourney, I don't remember what it is, 15 or 30 or whatever dollars it is. But I think with the Kadem, it's starting from 150 per month for a solo developer. So in that sense, it might seem a little bit more expensive. But if you would take the whole team to actually build the stuff, that's hourly rate, or even cheap hourly rate. So in that sense, it's a great tool when you compare of like needing to have a entire team for it.
Absolutely. I would say just for the Tree of Life project, I'd give it probably a $20,000 savings, just by being able to get the design to a point where you can start to get it into final modeling, rather than having to sculpt it, check it against the 3D, the 2D asset, and go back and forth. And it's just a really lengthy process, especially when we're talking about very complex geometries. For me, it's worth every penny. And who knows, maybe, they also do like a per credit subscription. I don't know if it's like $20 per iteration or something. But it's really useful, and I think it's a tool that I hope to see grow. I hope that we don't find out that it's just a bunch of people working behind the scenes to make it happen. I do believe that it is fully AI, or I'm sorry, a hybrid AI human interface. But I've seen some articles out there, but to me, it doesn't really matter. It's a very useful tool in this, and especially for anybody really getting into this space right now.
Yeah, and some of the tests that we have been running with that, and it was pretty much immediate or something. So in that and knowing the 3D modeling process, it would be pretty much impossible of having team responding so quickly when we ran some
Yeah.
tests. So I also believe that it's actually there needs to be some sort of algorithms, and it's a great tool. And but what MCG actually mentioned, that like that there is still that process of needing to put that to some software and a little bit of polishing and optimization. But as these tools are getting better, so hopefully at certain point we actually get rid of entirely that polishing and optimization phase, where it would mean that you would create that architecture entirely, like some designs you would be coming up with that with the mid journey, you would be putting them to Kaidim and then getting those 3D models. Maybe you got an idea that I would want to have this certain table here, and then you just put it again, and then you place it in Unreal. You would be putting those together. So it's a like
Hmm.
exciting future, what we're heading towards.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and then what about like when you think about the like Unreal and all that, and like all these, like what are your dreams and like the ideas that where do you want to see this building, uh like when there's people, let's say soft access for example, or full access
Hmm.
one day, where there's like bunch of people, dreamers who are the citizens of the Cornerstone and visitors coming in, and what do they what do they do there?
Yeah, great question. So the main function for this building for us is kind of a headquarters and a showcase of what the metaverse is capable of doing with regards to of connecting and helping inspire new ways of collaboration. So I mentioned previously. Let's just say you just got hired by. Let's just use a random company. Red Bull, and you're located on the opposite side of the world as them, and you're part of their Formula One racing team, etc. And you got to get clued into what's going on. So Red Bull will host a metaverse conference once a year in our building. Everyone's going to come in from Red Bull instead of flying across the world. Now you are able to virtually be in a space with everyone all at once, an architecturally interesting space, which is key because the current collaboration platforms that are out there for this type of environment are fairly kind of cartoony. They're just not really functioning quite well as like an inspiring space to be. It's where you want to really explore. So again, it's about creating this architecturally appealing world class structure that you're going to. We look at it as a right now we're looking at screens, but 5 to 10 years, when wearable devices become extremely cheap and very usable, I can imagine someone putting on some eyeglasses and transporting into the space. So they're going to come in here for learning sessions, breakout sessions. We're going to have a variety of things. So the main floor we'll call that like our main conference center. So you're going to have keynote speakers. This is where you can kind of network with each other and talk to each other. And, you know, and just imagine just like we're on a call and you're in this space, like you'll have kind of our ideal is you have these kind of real world experiences where you can kind of whisper and just talk to the person next to you, or if someone's on stage, you can hear that louder, and you can see someone across the room and you can kind of navigate towards them and communicate and talk. So for us, again, this building is all about, you know, keynote speakers, breakout spaces, really kind of creating a space that a normal convention or some sort of like utilization for the commercial environment would utilize. But we can see so many other uses too. So let's just say it's not utilized as that. You can, I mean, like, you know, we've talked about gamified experiences. We've talked about, you know, whether it's maybe an art exhibition or some sort of like breakout from a larger event, whether it's happening at Paradise or at the Central Island. There's so many things that this building can be functioned as, and we look forward to just discovering what that is as well. But that's kind of the general use case for our space.
Yeah, that's really cool, and I think I think also like blending that in with the all the other things, and um, so yeah, and maybe Henry, are you in the spot that you can share a comment in audio, or uh, get you to also give your insights on that? So Henry also from Elora.
Right
Great.
on. Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Sure can.
Awesome. Good deal. Yeah, I mean, I think nailed it on the head. And going from taking what I've mentioned pretty much in the chat room, it's we want to be able to provide an experience, like a storytelling experience on a whole new level, right? Like I think all of us as humans have grown as people, have learned and from a knowledge base or through storytelling for hundreds of years, right? I think even in uni days, if you think about our ancient ancestors, it's all been through storytelling. And so I think the metaverse offers that opportunity for us to get back to that type of life, that ability to teach on a whole new scale versus your traditional university or higher education or secondary school through books, right? You sit in a classroom, you sit still for 8 hours, you read a book, you listen to someone dictate to you. This allows you to be immersed in whatever topic, or maybe even from a professional standpoint, from like, let's talk about work. Imagine being onboarded for the first time and, you know, really learning about an organization's culture through a whole different way, right? Because how we are onboarded into an existing company is you receive a PDF, a PowerPoint presentation. Oh, welcome to Red Bull, right? Like I'm just gonna keep going on that one. And it's this lame presentation that we all forget, that we hate for like the first 2 hours of our lives, and it means nothing. But imagine if you can go into a virtual world to where you're like, oh shit, wow, this is something really immersive. I understand the people who work here. I understand the culture, the story, the mission, because now we're being immersed in something that's more like a storytelling like experience. So that's what we're trying to bring into Laura as well, right? Is that we're trying to unite hubs all over the world. For example, our first client is Workplace Evolutionaries. They have hubs all over the United States and into the European areas. And like Mal was talking about, we can't get all these people to fly and unite in one area or multiple areas at a single time, right? It's not feasible. So if we are able to coordinate like we are here, we do this in the metaverse, say, hey, all of us join us at, you know, let's call it 8 a.m. Mountain Time. And therefore, the EMEA folks, the APAC folks, you know, North America can join one central location, and we can chat. We can establish relationships that didn't exist before. Something, and this is a true use case that we are also expanding on, is we have come to realize that people with neurodiversity are being enabled to be visible inside of the metaverse. And what do I mean by this? We have encountered people who have stuttered in real life. If I'm standing in front of Matt or Mika, right, and I have a stuttering issue, I can't speak to you in real life because I have a heavy stutter. Not me personally, but the person that I encounter. However, this person behind an avatar was able to have a fluid discussion. Imagine that you're enabling someone who in real life has a stutter, but has the ability to speak and communicate with you fluidly behind the avatar. That this is the beautiful thing. It's remarkable, right? Like you're giving this person voice, you're giving them visibility through an experience like the metaverse here. So we're starting to come across more of these examples, and we're starting to see that that these use cases that we don't know, we're starting to realize and see in a real person as it starts to be established. We're giving so much opportunity for people that we don't encounter, that we don't, I don't think we serve correctly, right? So that is something too that we're really expanding on as DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, and really expanding on that space. Empathy too. That's another one. You know, I think our country, our world, we lack empathy. And imagine if we can help people experience from another person's perspective their life, right?
Yeah.
I think the universe allows you to do that. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, really
Great follow up.
really cool. Really cool. Yeah, but it's exciting, like what these certain things that maybe we wouldn't even imagine, but they by testing and coming out with these different solutions, we actually start to learn about these things, and even some solutions, and it's been very similar with all these. If you go 15 years back, with the before the smartphone started to enter the market, or even before internet, we didn't expect certain things to happen in a way they are now very common practice or very common usage, and this is something very similar thing that is going to be taking place with the metaverse. Like we don't know all of these things. We're going to be entering to these things, and we're learning as we're going, and that's also part of that exciting journey. But like before, we only have 4 minutes here, so would want to just share quickly like a one exciting thing here, as uh, we are currently we have been discussing also a little bit about the master plan and all of these things, and we have these certain public areas and certain like in the together with the districts there is these public areas. And now something, as we started to discuss about the soft access of Cornerstone, and that being concentrated there pretty much on top of the circle and that central lake. And now actually in this we're wanting to introduce a new area, which is the Noza Avenue. So this is gonna be the main shopping street of Cornerstone, and that will be when we're going to be doing the soft access. So it will be possible also to be able to walk around the Noza Avenue. So this is very exciting for us, because we believe that this shopping and interaction and all that will be a very important part, and that's why we wanted to include this to be part of when we get to enter to the island, so people would be able to also come to the Noza Avenue. So and there is like with the landowners, like there has been that discussion already going on. If someone is a little bit far away when we do the soft access, so then we will be allowing someone to enter for the empty plots. Meanwhile we're building, so that everyone who actually has been building something, that they are capable of having it inside part of that. Um, uh, Somehow limited, because the whole island, if we would just have almost like in the way the Finland is, that it's just some northern Finland, middle Finland, or it's just like one house there and 5 kilometers and the next house. So it wouldn't be so exciting to have that in the metaverse. So that's why we want to concentrate the stuff, and also starting to put that Nose Avenue together. And we'll be also putting some type of design competition together, where we want people to really motivate people to start creating and utilizing these different tools. So part of that competition, it will be launched, and it will be not just for 1 week, but it will be a little bit longer competition, because there the whole thing is to create a storefront for the Noza Avenue, and the one who's actually, then we're gonna be 3D modeling that building for the one who's getting that. So it's actually gonna be a big competition. So we're gonna be building, and then there is even that land plot involved in that, and that's why it's gonna be a longer one, because we wanna get the community of creating. So we will be launching that competition, but it's actually designing for Noza Avenue. So you can start already maybe practicing with Midjourney before we launch that stuff, so that you create a storefront, and the one who's gonna be selected as a winner will actually get that plot of land, and also we will be 3D modeling that actual store for that. Yeah.
Love
So
it.
so it's like big stakes, good stuff coming. And for that soft access, it will be not with the unique dreamers, a little bit similar than Fabricant. We will be putting some type of Cornerstone uniforms out there that people will be able to come and have a little variation. But for the dreamers later on, because they're like, for that technology to have it fully in the Unreal Engine, where everyone can actually come in to their likeness and all that. So there are still some stuff, and we'll actually organize a full AMA up around the metaverse identity stuff, not just the virtual identification code, but like some ideas and talk around the concept of virtual identity, and and what that should be. But yeah, so that was like that was it for this AMA, and really nice that you joined. And we'll be putting, but now as you're the first ones to know about the competition, so you can get your practice gloves on and start planning, and you already gonna know where that area is. So some cool storefronts in the plans, and we want to populate that Noza Avenue in the future, that when people actually, some visitors would be, for example, coming in, they would be actually able to shops and stuff, and because that's the whole big idea of Cornerstone, of getting people to spend those fragments that you guys been collecting. So estimated date for that release, we have been starting to put resources into to start setting up the Fabricant style of concentrated version of Cornerstone. So in the end of Q1 or beginning of Q2. So that's pretty much how it looks like currently. So yeah. But very cool. Thank you, MCG. Thank you, Henry, for joining in, and it was a pleasure talking with you guys and having everyone who was here listening.